I've just finished one of my 25 books for 2025. A novel I also placed on my 10 before the end because why not double down? It definitely saves time. It was an unusual read, similar in some ways to the previous book I read by the same author, though more Agatha Christie in style based in the 20s or early 30s. It's not really the same concept, but the writing style was similar enough that I felt quite comfortable. The book was the perfect quick read to act as the filling in a hyped up fantasy sandwich, because right now it seems as though the majority of my reads are fantasy or romantasy, and that's not likely to change in the foreseeable future. I've said it before and I will say it again, 2025 is the year of the hyped up book. From the release of Onyx Storm and other books similar at the start of the year, to Shield of Sparrows, The Wolf King, and Direbound in the last few weeks. Of course, there are other books still on the calendar for this year, including the final book in J. Kristoff's Empire of the Vampire trilogy. I think it's Empire of the Dawn, and I've already received my notification that I should be prepared for the money to come out. And of course, the second book in the Fae and Alchemy series by Callie Hart, Brimstone. That one is available at the end of November. As with previous episodes, I am going to add that shorter second review at the end, so stay tuned to listen to that one. It's an intriguing November-focused novel. Very, very different from what I'm going to be talking about in a moment. Anyway, less of that. Let's get on with the chunky review for the fortnight. This week I am taking a journey to far-off mythological lands, and my travelling companion is the daughter of a goddess, hidden away from the eyes of the world, a secret from those who could harm her. The cover is beautiful, though it doesn't really tell you much of the story. The story itself is a take on a popular Chinese myth, and the book is Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Lynn Tan. And I am going to take the opportunity right now to apologise if I pronounce any of the gorgeous names incorrectly, but I promise I am going to do my best to not mangle them. I'm Ray, an unapologetic bookworm, introvert, self-confessed hermit, and long-time depression sufferer. This is my quiet space to share thoughts as I make my way through an ever-growing, and though I did halt for a while, that's changing, to be read pile. Join me as I explore stories one book at a time, with 100% honest and completely spoiler-free reviews. Welcome to my world, and enjoy the stay. A young woman's quest to free her mother pits her against the most powerful immortal in the realm, setting her on a dangerous path where those she loves are not the only ones at risk. Growing up on the moon, Xingyin is accustomed to solitude, unaware that she is being hidden from the powerful celestial emperor who exiled her mother for stealing his elixir of immortality. But when her magic flares and her existence is discovered, Xingyin is forced to flee her home, leaving her mother behind. Alone, powerless and afraid, she makes her way to the Celestial Kingdom, a land of wonder and secrets. Disguising her identity, she seizes an opportunity to train in the Crown Prince's service, learning to master archery and magic, despite the passion which flames between her and the Emperor's son. To save her mother, Xingyin embarks on a perilous quest, confronting legendary creatures and vicious enemies across the earth and skies. But when treachery looms and forbidden magic threatens the kingdom, she must challenge the ruthless celestial emperor for her dream, striking a dangerous bargain where she is torn between losing all she loves or plunging the realm into chaos. I'm still struggling a little bit and experimenting with this brand new format for the podcast, but I do think that keeping the summary itself brief is a much better way to go. If you did prefer the old way, please do drop me a line or leave a comment wherever you're listening to this. Of course, I will be talking about the plot, characters, experiences, and some of the underlying themes in the book in more detail in my personal review. And I am still going to do my best to maintain the whole no spoilers attitude so I don't ruin everything for you. On the moon, hidden in quiet exile, a young woman named Xingyin grows up surrounded by beauty, music, and sorrow. Her mother, Chang'e, is the fabled moon goddess, immortal but imprisoned for taking the elixir of immortality that once belonged to her husband, Yi, the mortal archer who saved the world by shooting down 9 blazing suns. The truth, though, is not what the legends say. Chang'e took the elixir not out of greed or betrayal, but to save her young, unborn daughter's life. To the outside world, she is a tragic, selfish creature. To Xingyin, she is both protector and prisoner. Their life together is gentle but lonely, bound by love, secrecy, and a shared yearning for freedom. As Xingyin grows older, her dormant powers begin to awaken, and that awakening shatters the fragile safety of their isolation. The celestial empress, who despises Yi for killing her kin, the songbirds, senses the disturbance on the moon. When she arrives to investigate, Chang'e realizes that if the empress discovers Xingyin's existence, her daughter will be destroyed. In a desperate act of love, Chang'e sends Xingyin away alone, terrified and unprepared for the vastness of the immortal world below. Thrown into the celestial kingdom, Xingyin disguises herself as a servant in the imperial palace. She quickly learns that court life is as dazzling as it is dangerous, full of gossip, politics, and watchful eyes. However, her cleverness and courage catch the attention of Crown Prince Li Wei, the emperor's only son, who sees below and beyond her humble origins and decides to make her his companion above other people in the families of nobility. Under his friendship and guidance, Xingyin begins to flourish. She trains in magic, archery, and combat, excelling in every challenge placed before her. The two grow inseparable, bound by shared curiosity and mutual respect. But the warmth of their connection soon deepens into something more, a love that cannot be spoken in the shadow of Li Wei's royal duty. When Xingyin discovers that he is betrothed to Princess Feng Mei of the Phoenix Kingdom in order to secure an alliance, her heart is broken. The couple have developed a strong bond, and there was never any indication that a bride was waiting for him. The announcement tears apart the fragile dream that Xingyin had begun to build. Devastated but resolute, she chooses not to fade into obscurity, but to fight, to finally do what she had intended when she left the moon. She is going to make her own mark on the world and find a way to free her mother from the exile she was placed in by the Celestial Emperor. Xingyin joins the Celestial Army, where her courage earns both admiration and enmity. Her commander, Captain Wen Yi, is a gifted warrior, calm, intelligent, and hiding secrets of his own. Under his mentorship, Xingyin hones her skills, and an unspoken bond grows between them. Together, they face formidable foes, waiting in the shadows to seek revenge on the Celestial Kingdom and its inhabitants, including rogue spirits, shadow beasts, and vengeful demons. Slowly but surely, Xingyin begins to prove herself as not just a survivor, but a warrior worthy of legend. But even in victory, betrayal lurks. When Xingyin and Wen Ji are sent to the demon realm to retrieve the dragon's stolen pearls, objects holding the dragon's very existence, something that Xingyin is not aware of, she discovers a devastating truth about Wen Ji and his loyalty to the Celestial Kingdom. Though Wenji's love for Xingyin is undeniable, and he is perfectly happy to use his feelings for her and the feelings that she has developed for him as a tool to manipulate her into bowing to his will. If that fails, well, there are always alternatives. And here is where I stop giving the plot away, because this is where the twists and turns in the story start to get a little bit complicated. Secrets, lies, vengeance, and hope pull the story towards its end. Though, with a sequel already published and currently on my shelf, I know that it's not the case. But how does this book fare when compared to other mythological adaptations? Right, well, you know what I have to say next. This truly is my personal disclaimer when it comes to being bookish, and I really do say it at some point in every single episode. However, it's the truth and it needs to be said. I am not telling you about any of these books to influence you into reading something you have no interest in. I know that not every book is for everyone. Occasionally, it can be great to step outside your comfort zone and see if another genre is something you'll enjoy. There are some books that cross genre lines: fantasy, crime, romantic thrillers, and while not all of these will be for you, you don't know until you try. I've always been someone who will try any genre once, and I will never critique an author unless I've read something they've written, which is why I have The Mister by E.L. James lingering in the archives on my Kindle. I have actually done a review on it, though I don't know if it was on the podcast. Anyway, less of that. Let's see what others thought about Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tan before I get to my own feelings on the book. La Petite Prit gave the book 1 star, saying that they didn't feel as though they were the intended audience. Before I begin, I want to make it clear that I am not the intended audience for this book, but I discovered it while reading it, because from the plot I thought it would be something I could enjoy. Sadly, I was hugely disappointed by this book. First of all, for a 512-page novel, there's no depth to anything. The characters are one-dimensional, the plot points seem disjointed, and the relationships did nothing for me. The main character was annoying, and she had like 2 characteristics, which she reiterated every 2 pages, but it was more of a tell than a show. The book, in general, was more of a tell than a show. The plot, as I said, felt disjointed, because it was a succession of fantasy tropes, and it seemed like the author had made a checklist of the most popular tropes in fantasy and just added and added without a real motive. Everything was also very quick, and I didn't have the time to care about any of it. This influenced the relationships, which were flat and devoid of any emotion. I didn't care for any of them, and I have no attachment to any of the characters. While reading, I had this weird feeling and was constantly reminded of ACOTAR by SJM, which I hate. If you are a fan of SJM, I think this book will be for you. If you are looking for a more diverse ACOTAR and with no smart, you should definitely give this book a try, because I think you are the intended audience, while I clearly wasn't. I won't be reading book 2, especially because I don't think there's anything more to add to the story, which should either have developed as a trilogy or as a standalone, in my opinion. Wow. Well, she certainly didn't hold back in her views. However, she also rated The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches a 1 with a similar review. So, yeah, and that's one of my favourite books of the last couple of years. Part of the strange joy in finishing a book, whether I loved it or not, is looking through the reviews and seeing how other people felt about the book. Depending on the genre, the number of reviews does vary greatly, as can the way these reviews are written. I noticed with this particular novel that some of the 5-star reviews actually used the common fantasy review writing style with a lot of memes and GIFs and very effusive use of exclamation marks. And I enjoy them. I think that they make an overall enjoyable read when you've finished a book. I don't think you should ever necessarily read through all of the reviews on a book while you're reading the book itself, or make a decision on purchasing a book by reviews from complete strangers. I like to think that I've become a friend to some of you, or maybe a reliable narrator of of reviews in general if you've been listening to me for a while, but I'd never say, oh, I hated this book, so you're going to absolutely loathe it, because everybody is different. I have to be honest though, sometimes the reviews are better than my overall view of the book. There have been some incredible reviews out there, and I have mentioned them previously, so I'm not going to go into it again. The overall rating for Daughter of the Moon Goddess is similar across both Goodreads and Storygraph. On Goodreads, it has a 4.07, and on Storygraph, it is just a fraction lower at 4.06. Daughter of the Moon Goddess was originally released in January 2022, so there has been time for it to earn its review stripes. In comparison with other books with a much higher profile, it has not garnered as much attention. However, given that it is part of a smaller fantasy subgenre, namely Chinese mythological adaptations, I'd say it's doing pretty well. There are a number of novels that have joined these ranks, and I will be talking about them a little bit later on. Right now, the book has 123,860 ratings and 20,688 full reviews on Goodreads. That's pretty good. And on Storygraph, it actually has 34,842 reviews. Marquise decorated her review with beautiful gifts and clearly loved the book, giving it 5 stars. She said, "Fantastic story. I'm rarely caught by surprise by plot twists because normally I can see the foreshadowing from afar, especially if it's a retelling or inspired by mythology. Nonetheless, Daughter of the Moon Goddess managed to surprise me. There was one big twist I didn't see coming, and so I was mad at it, but in a good way. Because I'm like that. I celebrate when an author cleverly fools me and catches me off guard. Bow to Lynn for pulling it off. I'm a declared hater of love triangles, mostly because I detest them on principle, and for the drama and angst they bring to the story, but also because in the quite rare cases I've been able to tolerate triangles for the sake of the plot, the chosen lucky bee is usually not the one I favour for the main lead to end up with. I was made to suffer for my preference of character in this book, but fortunately not everything was killed in the bud, and I'm so looking forward to what is to come. No, I can't name which character I'm favouring, as it'd be a huge spoiler, but once you read the book you'll easily see who it is. The world building of this book is credible without being overdone or underdone. No complications and excessive descriptions. It's mostly at court, but with incursions around, so you can be shown the world the immortals inhabit. If you know nothing about Chinese mythology, you'll still both understand and identify the references because it all trickles in at correct doses for you to get an idea about how things work in the universe of Chinese immortals. I am not familiar with their folklore beyond knowing who Xingyin is and the goddess of the moon, but at no point did I feel lost or confused. It's easy and readable. I'm also pleased with the fact that, for once, it's the male character that is the good boy, while the female lead is, well, complicated, but lovable. Does this mean the era of hot jerks that dominate fantasy and YA is coming to a close, and we'll be seeing more and more upright good boys, but still hot? Still, I am also pleased by the prospect of seeing a properly done redemption arc in the next book, for a certain someone. Right. Now that I've mentioned what others are saying, here's what I really think about Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Lynn. No spoilers, just 100% my honest feelings. Did I like the book? I honestly put off reading this book for so long that it's likely if I hadn't placed it on my 25 reads for 2025, it would have lingered there for another decade, or until I did a mass unhaul to prepare my shelves for yet another big purchase cycle. And they do happen. There is a part of me that feels as though I may be doing the book a bit of a disservice in reviewing it before I've read the sequel, Heart of the Sun Warrior. But I have started, so I'll finish. And I have added the second book to my 10 before the end, which ensures I will be reading it before the end of 2025, unless an asteroid hits and everything goes up in smoke beforehand. Please don't let that happen. When I first picked up this book, there was a little something niggling in my brain. The name of the moon goddess was familiar, the world that was depicted so carefully and so well that it exploded in my mind in glorious technicolor felt like one I had seen before, hence being so clear. And then it hit me. Despite working more hours than was probably healthy during the time we will now refer to as 2020, a film was added to Netflix. And when I was waiting for one of our American contractors to get online for a ridiculous 2 a.m. meeting one Sunday, I happened across it. Over the Moon, a beautiful animated film from Sony about a young girl and the moon goddess Chang'e. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend. It was beaten to the Best Animated Feature Oscar by Soul, which I have watched once and never again. But anyway, on with the book. I just thought that Over the Moon was worth a mention and is a stunning animated film. It's on Netflix. The world that has been created in this book is rich and colourful, while also having darker elements that are fed by Xingyin's desperation and the crueler characteristics of other characters, including the Celestial Empress. As Xingyin leaves the only home she has ever known, frightened for her life and desperate to find safe haven, I was able to feel her fear, the panic that soared through her bloodstream, and I was anxious for her to escape the people who were chasing her. Everything about the characters is so vivid, so clear in my head, that as scenes were being described, I could build a picture of them. The world that has been created is full of wonder. It is rich with Eastern history and provided the same kind of imagery I experienced when I was reading Six Crimson Cranes. I will never not love that book. The cover gave me nothing, though it is beautiful, and I have to be honest, some covers I will look at and immediately get an image of what I am meant to see when I meet the characters and experience their worlds. This time it was a blend of Over the Moon, Raya and the Last Dragon, and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Fluidity, poetry, and music melded to make the book a film in my head. And I have to be honest, I love it when that happens. I think this would make a really good film, to be fair. Xingyin was a very interesting character. She was at times rebellious and so young, especially at the beginning. Her youth came across as naivety, and it was frustrating for a time, but as a girl who had never visited the outside world and was unaware of anything beyond the Moon Palace walls, that's hardly surprising. But then, when her back was against the wall, she developed an incredibly strong backbone. There is a lot to admire in her, from pampered and protected to someone who has to protect others in order to achieve a goal. While away from her mother and her home, she is forced into servitude, and though she has rebellious thoughts and is resentful, she finds strength in her new situation. That's not to say that she doesn't occasionally feel sorrow for what she has lost and angry at her current situation, but she persists, determined to find a way to win the game she has been forced to play. When it comes to the two men in her life, Li Wei and Wen Ji, I have to be honest, I was confused for rather a long time and quite a huge proportion of the book. Li Wei felt a little bit wishy-washy, not exactly weak, but someone who initially didn't seem to stand up for himself. He is unable to tell Xingyin the truth about his position, the fact that he is betrothed, duty or not, it doesn't matter. And for a while I found him to be annoying because of both of those things. Xingyin is strong and determined in all things because of what she's gone through. Yet when it comes to this man who showed her kindness and mercy when others were treating her like the person they assumed her to be, she crumbles like a stale biscuit. I loved that she was the one who decided to turn away when the truth was revealed. This was, for me at least, another sign of her strength, something she definitely needed. As I said, probably quite obviously, my feelings for Li Wei are complicated. I found him to be so indecisive and not the strong man she needed for whatever lay ahead. But his unintended rejection and the betrayal that Xingyin saw his lies to be pushed her in the direction she needed to take. So for that, at least, I feel grateful. Of course, he does have his moments and proves himself further into the story, but his beginning is what sets the tone, at least for me as a reader. Wenji is a totally different kettle of fish. That he is the third in this bizarre love triangle that, if you ask me, wasn't needed, is an interesting choice. If there could be anyone more opposite to the young celestial prince, then it is this strong and dark warrior. From the moment you meet him, you know that his stares, his glares, and his interest in Xingyin are going to lead somewhere. You just don't know where. I wish I'd had a map. I don't want to give too much away because that would ruin not only the book but the twists. And if you haven't read it, that is what you are going to be leading up to. And that is a reason to read them in the first place. I enjoyed this book, and though I only gave it 4 stars, no, you did not hear incorrectly, 4 stars, because certain moments felt too contrived and there were plot elements that I felt offered little in the way of character or story development, it is still a book that I would recommend. The way it was written evoked incredibly beautiful images in my mind, and the fact that it is a duology offers the opportunity for those elements that I felt unnecessary in the first book to be redeemed before the story fully comes to a close. I am incredibly curious to see what will happen and how their tale will be continued, as though some doors were left open, specifically in relation to Xingyin, Wenji, and Li Wei, the goal that our protagonist started the story with has already reached its conclusion, and introducing another quest feels a little bit superfluous. Though love and growth are 2 of the strongest themes in the novel, the story is also about identity. From the start, Xingyin knows that her mother is the moon goddess and her father was a famous warrior, but she never really knows who she is. And it takes being forced from her home to not only understand the depths of her strength, but also to learn about who she has the potential to become. While living in the safety of the palace with her mother and those who kept her in exile at the behest of the celestial empress and emperor, she was in a prison. Growing up and developing beyond those walls gives her freedom she never experienced, while also strangely imprisoning her behind a wall of lies. She can never reveal who she truly is, so her freedom, wherever she happens to be, remains limited. When she is finally strong enough to reveal the truth, she risks her life to obtain her mother's freedom, while again putting her own in danger. Her sacrifice is a mirror of the sacrifice her mother made when she drank the elixir of immortality to save her daughter. I love that this is an offering, a sacrifice they are both willing to make, and that, in some ways, brings one element of Xingyin's story full circle. If you enjoyed Daughter of the Moon Goddess or want to read something similar, try these. At the beginning of the episode, I said that I would definitely come back to this, and here I am with my recommendations for reads that I feel evoke the same feelings as Daughter of the Moon Goddess. I could go into a complete list of mythology retellings, but thinking about this particular book, I know that I need to choose other novels that have a similar tone. So while I could happily reel off a list of Greek and Roman myths, that will not be the case. Six Crimson Cranes, The Dragon's Promise, and Her Radiant Curse are 3 incredible novels by Elizabeth Lim. Beautifully written, strong characters, and an intriguing story that carries through. This series is a must-read, and one I devoured incredibly quickly. Kind of wish that I could read them again for the first time. Song of Silver, Flame Like Night, and Dark Star, Burning Ash Falls White. Wow, that's a tongue twister if ever I had to say one. Are 2 novels in the Song of the Last Kingdom series by Emily Wen Zhao. This is another series about a mysterious kingdom inspired by ancient Chinese mythology, so fits in here perfectly. To be honest, I do need to add more books like these to my reading list. I have a few on my shelves, including the Roots of Chaos series by Samantha Shannon, which starts with Priory of the Orange Tree, and of course the Poppy War trilogy by R.F. Kuang. However, I have yet to get around to reading them. Maybe that is a project for next year. Oh boy, things really do change quickly. During my last few episodes, I mentioned that I had been made redundant and the job hunt was not going that well. That all changed just last week. And this Monday, the 3rd of November, if you're listening to this episode on release day, that's yesterday, I started a brand new job. So join me in a little toast with a hopefully hot cup of tea to celebrate that things have taken a positive turn and I have rejoined the workforce after just 6 weeks. It's a huge relief because while the additional reading time was amazing, it had also become a little bit stale and I had started to veer back towards bad habits such as staying in bed until 10 a.m, watching YouTube all day, and eating cereal for dinner every evening, which is not a good thing. Anyway, less of that. Let's take a look at my mini review for the fortnight. In my last episode, I talked about Accomplice to the Villain, the third book in the Assistant to the Villain series. This week, I am going to extol the virtues of Darker Days by Dutch author Thomas Olde Heuvelt. And it's a very different type of book. Though this episode is being released after Halloween, it's actually set in November, so now is the ideal time to read a book where the darker days encompass the entire month. Bird Street is in Lost Haven, Washington State, a seemingly innocuous location, a street full of families young and old, but at the heart of their fortune is a dark secret. For 11 months of the year, the families are bathed in the light of good fortune, successful careers, good grades at school, happy marriages, and good health. Yet, as October drifts into November, that changes. 30 days of anxiety, anger, anguish, and danger as they need to fulfill the promise they all made to the accountant, a shadow of a man who appears at the beginning of November to receive the sacrifice he was promised. The people in Bird Street made a deal with the devil, and every November he comes to collect. Unfortunately, this year, things are a little difficult. Though they have been searching all year, the residents of Bird Street have been unable to find someone ready to die. This person must be willing, they must be at the end, and they must head to the woods and be buried there. In November, the misfortune begins. The children are kept home from school, the parents take a sabbatical from their jobs, and strange things happen as the accountant and the gifts he bestowed are revoked in an effort to show what will happen if he doesn't get his sacrifice. Though we see this from the perspective of many, the core household where the changes are most apparent is that of the Lewis de Silva family. Their oldest daughter is on the cusp of being subject to the bargain her parents made. Kayla is 15. She suffers from depression, and her parents are concerned that she will be the willing sacrifice the moment the option is offered. However, Kayla also knows things. She has visitors, she hears voices, and she has spoken with the accountant. I truly love a good Faustian-packed novel. Goethe's Faust is one of my favourites. The way that this book, Darker Days, has been written, the darkness, the intrigue, and the incredible payoff is all incredibly clever. I enjoyed the way that we were introduced to the individuals who make up the street, their motives for making a bargain with the accountant, and the way that it all comes crumbling down on them. None of these people is innocent or nice. In the name of their own well-being, they have tricked people into dying and feel no remorse for their actions. This book asks the question, how far would you go to ensure good luck for your family? It's a difficult one to answer, but there must be a limit, and the adult residents of Bird Street step over the line repeatedly, no care for the consequences. Of course, that's not to say that someone else isn't watching and judging and measuring up what's right and wrong. I really enjoyed this book, and while it's nothing like most of the reading I have done this year, though it does bear some similarities to King's Sorrow by Joe Hill, which I may be talking about at a later date because that's a chunky one I need to reread all my notes on, I would recommend Darker Days by Thomas Olde Heuvelt. It's perfect for the darker November nights, and it's a book that really makes you think. Well, that's it for this week, and thank you so much again for listening, and for listening for the whole of this year and maybe the 4 years before it. If you're enjoying the show, why not share it with friends or family, and please do leave a star rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you might listen. It helps other people to find the podcast, and it really gives me a mood boost. You can find me on Instagram at beingbookish_pod, on X at being_bookish, and on TikTok at beingbookish_reviews, where I've actually been more active, and I am determined to stay such even when I go back to work. Prefer reading? Head to beingbookish.co.uk for spoiler-free reviews, my 2025 reading tracker, and all the links for the podcast in one place. Until next time, this is me saying farewell.